Hey guys, so in this video we're going to look at the basics of reverb. Now, I've got a Strymon BigSky in front of me here, and we're going to look at, the more global type of settings as it relates to reverb, which means that the things that we're going to discuss today, most reverb pedals will have these parameters and these settings that you can work with. So right now I'm on a kind of a whole reverb here. Let's just change that, go back to the whole reverb here. This is what the guitar sounds like when I just strike the strings. You can clearly hear there's some reverb happening there, and if I turn it off, it's super dry. If I turn it back on, so essentially that's what reverb does. It's short for reverberation, and it basically mimics the sound that you would hear when you play in different spaces. So as this particular reverb is a hall reverb, this is what your guitar would sound like if you had an amplifier and you'd strike the amplifier and the guitar through the amplifier in a hall. Of course, the sound is going to be traveling for a long time because it's a big space. Whereas if you are in a room, for example, let's turn that off. Turn it back on. This is like a room with like a wooden floor type of vibe. Very different to the hall here. So as you can see, both those are two different kinds of spaces. And then we also get different types of reverbs that would also go about emulating the same thing, whether it's a spring reverb, a plate reverb, and all those kind of fun stuff. So now that we have a good idea about what reverb is, why do we use it? Well, the thing is, if I'm on a hall reverb like this, my guitar just sounds bigger for those kind of arpeggiated ideas. I can also go to a setting like the Swell over here, and then that's going to give me this kind of a sound. You see it swells into that, so I can get kind of really interesting sounds as it relates to how I want to use the guitar. So I'm manipulating the sound of the guitar, specifically an electric guitar in this instance, just to sound differently, right? And we'll get into some of the deeper aspects of reverb later, but like I said, this video is really just a quick overview of the basic controls you will find on a reverb pedal. So first of all, this is my Decay button. Now it's set to 500 milliseconds, so the Decay button basically indicates how long a sound will hang around for before it goes away. So right now, as soon as I play it, the sound decays. If I turn it up all the way to like 20 seconds, then it's going to carry on for a really, really long time. So that's your decay. You want to set how long do you want that reverb sound to hang around. And that's right there, kind of in the middle. So that's the job of the decay feature. So let's make that a little bit longer. Now next up we have pre-delay. Now the pre-delay all the way to the left, it's going to sound like this. And all the way to the right, it's going to sound like this. As you can hear, it takes a while for that reverb sound to kick in. So you might want to experiment with that, especially if you're going to do ambient type of reverbs. Then you definitely want to have a bit of a pre-delay added to that. And we'll experiment with that in another video. But that's the job of the pre-delay. It determines how long it will wait before that reverb kicks in. And then finally we have the mix button. Now the mix button is just how much of the reverb do you want to be added to your sound. So if it's all the way to the left, it's not going to add any reverb to the sound. And if it's all the way to the right, you are only going to hear the reverb sound. So you might want to experiment with that and see how much of the reverb you wanted to add. Those are your three most basic controls. The decay, how long the reverb will hang around for. The pre-delay, how long it takes for the reverb to kick in. And then the mix, how much of the reverb you want to add. Now the reverb sound in and of itself also has some tonal characteristics which you can adjust with the tonal knob, the tone knob right here. So if I put it all the way to the right, that reverb sound is going to be very bright. All the way to the left, it's going to be more of a dull sound. So you can clearly hear the difference between a dull reverb and a bright reverb. So that is what you will do over there. And then some reverbs have what's known as a modulation. As you can hear when I play this note, the chord rather, there's modulation on that reverbed sound. Obviously a lot of it because I turn it all the way to the right. So that is basically what that's all about. Now the tone and the modulation, a lot of reverb pedals will come with that. And then something like the BigSky, it has these additional parameters that you can adjust. For example, in this case, how much mids do I want to have in my reverb sound? You see, so I can adjust the mids in my sound, and I can also change the type of hall. So in this case, it's an arena. Or more of a concrete hall. As you can hear, it changes the sound as well. So for the BigSky, you have a ton of different reverbs, and I'll just run you through a couple of those right now. And that is where some of these other parameters, come in very handy because it allows me to really manipulate the type of reverb. All right, so we're starting here. Let's start with a room reverb. If I do that with a hall reverb like we've just had, it'll sound like this. Now let's go to a plate reverb. Want to add some more of the plate in there, just turn that mix button. Next up we have a spring reverb. This is very well known with valve amps, old valve amps that came with the spring reverb built in. Here we have that swell that I used earlier. Next up we have a thing called plume. Sounds like this. And I can accentuate that by turning up the mix like this. Next up, there's a reverb. Let's see where we're at now at the cloud setting. So obviously the decay is set really high and the mix is set very high. I can change that a bit. this one you can hear the pre-delay is really working because I'm playing the chord and only then does the reverb kick in. I also have a choral effect, like oohs and ahs kind of added to the reverb. Now the shimmer is a real favorite because it basically is going to add a fifth or an octave to what I've got happening right here. Kind of weird. And then we have the magneto. Also kind of a weird sound. And then next up we've got a non-linear kind of phase reverb. And clearly you can hear the modulation. Yeah, so the modulation probably turned quite high there. If I turn it all the way down, it takes away the modulation effect, add it back in again. And then next up we have those reflections. And then back to a different kind of a room. And there you go, just a quick run through of reverbs. Specifically, we looked at the decay button that determines how long the reverb will hang around for, the pre-delay, how long it will take before the reverb kicks in, the mix, how much of the reverb you want to be added to the sound. The tone controls the brightness of the reverb sound. Then we looked at the modulation, which adds modulation to the reverb sound, whether that's chorus or phasing, basically adding an effect on top of that reverb. And then the other parameters, like we looked at the whole reverb, we can choose like an arena versus a concrete hall, or you can change the low end or the mids or the whatever other parameters you can control with that. So the BigSky is obviously one of the reverbs with a lot more kind of settings, etc. But if you take what you've learned in this video, and then you'll have a good idea of what all the controls do. And what we will do in future videos, we will look at what I call reverb recipes, because different styles of music use different types of reverb. And that's really fun when you start dialing in reverb to kind of match a specific sound so that you can play more authentically for that particular style. So we'll cover that in an upcoming video. Hopefully this has been helpful for you to get a good overview of what reverb is, the kind of controls you can use to manipulate it and to basically shape the reverb to your sound. And I've demoed some interesting sounds that you can get from a pedal like the Strymon BigSky.